Hi, if you are here, you've probably seen my previous video about the exploits of a small and sporty Mazda MX-5. Today's video takes us back to the same dealership where we've picked up the scoundrel, but we won't need to go down as far this time, as the car we'll be racing today is right at the top, the Mazda 323/Familia Interplay. Now, I've already seen a YouTuber known as Yellowbird, he's pretty popular in the space, actually do this, so I imagine I'll be able to do the same. Same rules as with the MX-5, no hybriding, single car only, in this case the Familia Interplay. Safe states between races in the championship aren't allowed, so yeah, let's begin. Now, because this car is as cheap as it is, its meager starting performance can be amended by the leftover funds by nabbing a Stage 1 turbo kit, a racing flywheel, and some weight loss pills, even though it really doesn't need them. The Sunday Cup as it stands is meant to be an introductory series to sharpen one's driving prowess. So I do exactly that by getting used to driving this thing, and boy it feels slow. Even with the turbo upgrade pushing it to 160 something horsepower, it sure doesn't feel like 160 something horsepower. But maybe it's just me being too used to the way the MX-5 drove. Speaking of driving, in addition to it being rather sluggish, to put it lightly, it definitely feels like a front-wheel drive car alright, with me almost failing the chapel corner at Tahiti alongside turn 1, but I wised up for the latter two races, and now it doesn't feel that bad. Maybe because it's not very heavy, but only time will tell. Before diving headfirst into the Clubman Cup, I do the exact same thing as with the MX-5, but now with more spare cash to play with. I grab the best clutch I can get, some sports suspension, and dump whatever's left into power. Again, the same story follows as with the MX-5, where only the third race at Rome gave me trouble, as a sudden lockup, obviously no fault of my own, at the end of lap 2 cost me the first attempt here. With a slight toe down the back stretch and some slightly aggressive driving, I managed to win. Next on the hit list is the FF Challenge. As with the MX-5, the Drivetrain Challenge didn't pose much of a threat, apart from race 2 at Midfield. It seems that this place and slower cars don't mix too well, at least when it comes to me being in a slower car. That's what I've pre-typed before doing race 2, but it was a complete wash, along with the following race. The Nationals were a breeze as per usual. I am pleasantly surprised by how well this car is performing, especially in the handling department, which really comes into play in the World Championship. The Continental events were essentially the same as with the MX-5. There's literally nothing for me to say about them. All the cars, they were just getting destroyed by this cheap economy. Well, realistically not really economy now, as it's quite pimped out sedan. So that is a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Anyway, moving on to the World Championship now. Before going into the race, I fiddled with the car's settings and fit all of the upgrades possible, totaling a peak power output of 376 horsepower at 7100 RPM, which if you take one quick gander at the red line, and you'll see that it's not as impressive as it looks. If you were to use the automatic transmission, you wouldn't even be able to reach it until top gear. And because the engine's power band is very peaky, it will definitely be sluggish. So far, it's been performing quite admirably, but how will it stack up against some of the fastest cars in the game? Let's find out.
3, 2, 1, go!
Obviously, I'm down on power and front wheel drive, so cornering is proving to be rather tricky, especially with all of the upgrades applied. I really should have done a shakedown of some description, as the increase in power and aero made the car faster but a lot more demanding to drive. So much so that the AI really started to gap me on lap 1, even more so than with the MX-5, which I still feel was the superior car. But my feelings changed at the beginning of lap 2, where I nabbed a double overtake on the M12 LM in saline, and just moments later I performed a glorious switchback pass on the GT40 for third, all within 10 seconds of each other. I managed to keep up the pace onto the back straight, where my lack of power does begin to rear its ugly mug, but I managed to make myself as wide as I can, getting a nasty break into the carousel at the end of it. After some rustle and tussle, I get up to second place right as I hit the backstretch on lap number 3. This time the victim was a Venturi 600 LM. After some blocking, I built up some distance between us, and at the end of the same straight on the following lap, I was challenging the lead R390 GT1 for, well, the lead, slipping by right before the end of Sector 3, and actually building a pretty sizable gap between me and the rest of the field throughout the final lap, which left me speechless. With spirits high, I went headfirst into the next round of the championship at Laguna Seca. You'd think, with the performance displayed at Trial Mountain, the Familia Interplay would dunk the competition in Laguna Seca as well. How about I just show you?
Bye, have a great time.
We failed.
Yeah, the mist before my eyes was cleared up pretty quick after the second attempt. For some reason, I just couldn't get any sort of pace out of it. Maybe it was because of the power band or my gearing. Regardless, I pressed on, and on attempt number 8, yes, 8, I managed to string together a few decent laps, alongside some liberal interpretations of track limits. This allowed me to keep the exotics at bay, and near the end of lap 4, I managed to catch the R390 short tail and pass it on the inside of turn 10. Fending off its attacks for what felt like an eternity, I even managed to get quite close to the second place saline, but any sort of move would have been way too risky to jeopardize my current position, so I decided to play it safe and bag the 4 points for third place, which was enough to keep the lead in the championship race. Now, this next venue is always a freebie and ripe for championship interference. Despite me having only a 2-point lead over the GT40, and the latter two cars being down by just 4 points from me, I intended to just bag the 8 points on offer and hope the AI will sort itself out. I did not premeditate this lineup of opponents, as this is legitimately the first try of the GT World Championship in this run, not counting the retries for the individual races. I deal with the regular traffic quite quickly, managing to get up to second by the end of the first lap, with the GT40 in the lead. I managed to get quite close to it right before the end of the lap, but the difference between our power and speed is too great, and it begins to build a pretty big lead, only for it to evaporate once we get into the twistier bits of the track. This continues up until the midpoint of lap 4, where I finally managed to close in and pass it on the hairpin, even managing to build a slight gap before the main straight, where it quickly melts away. But a well-timed block from me allows me to capitalize on the GT40's inability to pass and get a nice burst of speed right before turn 2. Losing it in the S's, I overestimate my car's turning ability on the big left-hand sweeper and end up going off track. But another cheeky block allows me to stay in the running, as I run the GT40 wide right before the end of Sector 3 and block it to the line, finishing first and claiming the much-needed 8 points. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to sabotage the GT40, so it ended up finishing second for 6 points. With only 4 points between us, heading into its home turf of Rome really worried me. I knew this car had what it takes to win, but I wasn't sure whether I'll be able to keep this charade up much longer. As alluded to before, Rome was a real pain. Even though it resembles Trial Mountain in a way, where there are loads of mid and high speed sections, so it's all about making use of what little power you've got in order to maintain speed. But again, like in Laguna Seca, I just couldn't get any pace out of it for the life of me. Worse yet, every attempt I've finished, the GT40 would just end up winning the race, meaning my 4-point lead over it in the championship would end up in a 3-point deficit at worst, which, going into midfield, is essentially a death sentence. Even if I'd magically end up ahead of the GT40, I'd still be down on points, unless I'd end up winning or finishing 4th, while the GT40 would end up last, which, let's be real, isn't happening, not even in my wildest dreams. So after taking a days-long break, I went back to settle the score. After a few warm-up rounds, I managed to get some actual pace, and at around the midpoint of the race, scoop up 5th place from my main rival, the Emperor of Rome, the Ford GT40. By the end of lap 3, I begin to battle for 3rd, which I lose. Condemned to remain in 4th place, I fight off the Vector and GT40 to claim 3 points and extend my lead to 6. If you paid attention when I was blabbing about points and stuff, you might have noticed that half of the field has a shot at taking the championship if I were to come last, but I only need to finish 5th to clinch the title. Remembering how the AI decided to be humble when it came to the MX-5, I had hoped the GT gods would bless me with such luck yet again, but I think it's best for you to see what actually went down. As I was busy talking right now, the on-screen footage should have shown you that this won't be no freebie, but the gods have generously thrown me a bone in the form of my main rival, the GT40, going off track right before the stubby downhill hairpin at the end of Sector 3. I've managed to get past and proceeded to do the same shenanigans as I've done to the Orca Viper in the MX-5, and that is sabotage. Knowing that I couldn't keep it at bay any other way, I tried my best to slow it down as much as possible in an attempt to maintain my championship hopes. Building a significant gap between us and the rest of the field, unfortunately at the end of lap 3, I failed to keep it at bay and the GT40 slipped past. Regardless, it is pretty much neutralized since there is no way for it to get past everyone to win. My only concern now is the Saline SR wide body. The only way I win the championship now is to have anyone but the aforementioned menaces to take the checkered flag. With bated breath, I crossed the finish line for the final time, and The 600LM wins the race with the sailing just behind in second, and I jump out of my seat with a sigh of relief as I've just won the GT World Championship by a single point, with a tie for second and overall very close point tallies across all of the opponents. This is the lowest amount of points I've ever accrued and won the GT World Championship. This might be the lowest amount of points possible to win the GT World Championship, or any championship in GT2 for that matter. Now this was a ride. I know that I've said this at the end of the MX-5 challenge run, but damn, this one really had me by the edge of my seat. I know I could have had an easier time if I had just re-rolled for a slower grid, but I doubt it would have been as entertaining nor as doable, as the faster AIs kept each other in check, which led to such a close title fight. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you've made it this far. Oh, and also let me know what sort of challenge you'd like to see next. Until next time, see ya!